happy with Flora back there that her grandkids came with her tonight. And I harassed her son in Walmart the other day. So uh, I told her, I said, you just got to know, Brother Hayes, equal opportunity harasser, right? And hadn't seen Fabian in a long time. I didn't recognize him, but he recognized Brother Hayes, which is good. Yeah, I think sometimes, uh, yeah, there you go. I always laugh because it's been so long since I saw Fabian, and they've moved back here. So he was talking about the boys' sleepovers, and now Brother Singletary and I, we were never part of the sleepovers. That was for the young ones, like Brother George. Yeah, George cooked the boys breakfast on Saturday. We'd lock them in here on Friday, and let's just say Jeb was pretty young then. All them guys, man, they about the thing was, I don't know who wore out who more. The young guys wearing out the young guys or what? But anyway, he was talking to me about it. I said, well, he said, but I said, we need guys your age to come and be in charge of sleepovers. How many know you got to pass it on, right? So anyway, I'm glad that they came with you tonight, Laura. I appreciate you being here tonight too, and yeah, we had a bunch of them, and of course Ryan and all of Tiny's boys, they were pretty good at keeping them in line. We'll just leave it at that. But I guarantee you, nobody ever messed with George. Them boys took care of him, and to this day, they would defend him. So we're going to talk about something new tonight. It's not new. We're going to talk about faith. And I know some of you are going to say, come on, brother. Hey, we talk about that all the time. I understand that in the time that we're living in, the one thing we need right now more than anything else is to recognize our faith and to work on it, right? And understand how that works. And Brother Hay is so glad that you're here. And I don't know how many we were talking, Brother Randy and Michael and I before church. How many know this AI stuff is pretty scary? And what is amazing, Brother Hay, Brandon can tell AI stuff. It looks real to Brother Hay, but the kids that are growing up with it are a lot better at it. But Brother Randy made the point to Brother Michael, yeah, they might have glitches right now that people can pick up on, but how many know those are going away? And because as they get better, and one of the things that I learned a long time ago is sometimes you can't even trust your own eyes, right? You think you can, but I remember years ago they had this thing, I think it was on 60 Minutes, and they were talking about how bad and how untrustworthy it was to have eyewitnesses. Because sometimes eyewitnesses, believe it or not, your brain fills in information. Yeah, that's one of the things they were talking about, all this crazy stuff. And Brother A's like, hey, man, I would think an eyewitness account would be the best thing, right? But how many know in order for it to really work, there needs to be several eyewitness accounts? Then you can add more things to that. But one of the things I want to talk to you about is, I don't know about you, but here's what I put down. It's Hebrews 11:10, kind of to be the, I guess, the name of it. It says, for he looked for a city which had foundations, whose builder and maker is God. And I just want you to think about this. How many would like to live in a place where God is really in charge? Have you ever thought about it? How cool would it be to be in a place where there was no sin? Wouldn't that be pretty good? How about being in a place where nobody ever told a story? And no, the reason I said story, because some people, when they're telling it, they think they're telling the truth. How many have ever been guilty of somebody telling you something and you passing it on and later on finding out what they told you wasn't true? Yeah, if you ever want to know how that works, ask Sister Hay how big the lizard was in the sanctuary when we had the sanctuary over there. Look, I promise you that lizard was about that big. To this day, she swears it was pretty big. So the reason I use the word story is because sometimes unintentionally we can get caught up in things, right? And unintentionally we can pass things on that aren't true. And so in the days that we're living in, we've got to be real careful to start sorting things out. I was talking to somebody the other day and they were saying some things, and Sister Hay had to calm me down a little bit. And I calmed down. But I could tell but some of the things that were being said I knew weren't true. And here's the problem. Randy's a French model. Yeah, I know. That I remember that commercial. I'm like, yeah, right, okay. But I mean, no, you can be whatever you want to be on the internet. You can. And how many know people can be real brave when they're talking on the phone or are sitting at a keyboard typing and all those kind of things? But how many know things change when things are confronted? And one of the things that really has bothered me here lately especially is, I don't know about you, but I am longing to make it to the other side. I want to get to heaven. I want to get to that place where I don't have to worry about all those things. And we make a million decisions a day sometimes. And sometimes the decisions we make, we can't really see the impact for a long time till way up the road. And sometimes we make good decisions. How many know sometimes we don't make such good decisions? And one of the things I learned in the military right away, the worst thing you could do is be inconsistent and be afraid to make any decision. Sometimes you just have to make a decision, right? Yep. So sometimes you get that in the middle thing, and here's what I always lean to. I always lean to the middle on certain things because the truth usually lies there. How many know people have their side of the story? Anybody think they're not telling you their perspective? If you want to, go ahead, Brother Suter. Yeah, that's right. That's right. You don't hear the other side. You don't hear the rebuttal. And I'll give you an example of the best way I can explain it. How many, when you talk to a child and they're in trouble? Anybody think about that? And when you're talking to that child and they're in trouble, how many know their perspective of why they're in trouble is a whole lot different than yours? Right? And what is so funny, brother? Hey, well, you didn't clean your room. What do you mean? I cleaned my room. How many know that's in the eye of the beholder? Just like in our house, right, Tanya? I swept the floor. And Mom goes, what? You missed this spot in the eye of the beholder. And I'm always trying to get people to understand some of these things, that we got to be real intentional about what we do. And as the days get closer to the coming of the Lord, we've got to get real intentional to what God's word teaches. And we do need to kind of keep our eyes on where we're headed. But we're going to start talking about faith, and I'm going to try to give you a definition, hopefully that makes sense to you, and to help you see it a little different. And the Bible definition of faith is real simple. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And the first question I have on your paper is, how hard is it to believe in unseen things? Think about that for a minute. Yep, call things that are not as they were or as it should be, right? By faith, we should be able to do those things. But sometimes what we forget is that the unseen is so hard for us as human beings to get our head around. Does that make sense? So when we start talking about faith and we talk about the unseen part, and when we get to the seen part, it'll make more sense. But for this part, I want to make sure that I don't get you too discouraged. But how many know that this unseen thing is hard to believe? Now, I want to tell you a secret. We do it more as human beings than you'll ever know. Anybody here ever been over the Rehoboth Beach Bridge besides brother and sister Hay? Well, it's a bridge in Delaware that goes across the Chesapeake Bay. Oh, man, that thing is up there a million miles. I already don't like bridges. Everybody knows my family. Man, I'm not a big fan of bridges, but that one is like really a long bridge. But you know what? When I went to go over that bridge in my car, I didn't stop my car, Brother Randy, and get out there and start inspecting and looking at the bridge and all that kind of stuff. You know what? I just trusted in the unseen. And you say, what do you mean by that, Brother Hay? I didn't see the people that built it. I didn't see how far the foundation went. But I trusted that bridge. Now, I know Donna and Michael's been to Hawaii. Anybody else besides me and Brother Randy been to Hawaii? Brother Singletary? Okay, so for us, Hawaii is not an unseen thing. We've been there. How many of you know Hawaii exists? And if I say to you, how do you know? Tanya answered it. It's on the map, Dad. What's wrong with you? Well, somebody drew the map. How do we know they drew Hawaii, right? How many know that's really Hawaii? It sounded like you don't have a clue, right? So when we're talking about faith, though, right? So Hawaii sent it back. And I want you to think about this, but when we start talking about faith, how hard is it for us to trust God sometimes for the things we can't see? We know it's in his word. If he says he'll never leave us or forsake us, right? And the evidence of the unseen part of that, which once we get to talking about that next week, the evidence of that is his presence we feel close to us when we're struggling, right? But the unseen, what if you're having a bad time and the skies are kind of, all clouded over and feels like it's made out of brass, and the more you pray, the less you think you're getting it through. Kind of changes your opinion of what the unseen is, right? And so, Brother Hay wants you to understand with me that a lot of people say, well, I can't have faith because I got to be able to put my hand on it. I got to be able to touch it. I got to be able to do all these things. And Sister Hay said it when I said, well, how do you know Hawaii is? If I say it's not there, I can argue with you. Have you guys ever heard people arguing about Wyoming? Do you know there is a whole conspiracy theory out there that Wyoming don't exist? The state. I know, but I'm just telling you, there's a whole group of people that say it don't exist. And one of their arguments is, have you ever met anybody from Wyoming? You had a brother who lived there? Okay. But for most people, it's such a small place with such a small amount of people that most people have never had an experience. And so all of a sudden, I kid you not, there's this big conspiracy theory out there that Wyoming doesn't exist. You think I'm kidding you? When you go home, Google it. And it's going to freak you out when you see some of the stuff they got online. Or that it's not true. Well, and we look at that, right? Were you going to say something, Brother Cinta? No. If you're like, Brother, hey, I don't need no help forgetting. I need help remembering. No. Well, but how many people say to you, how can I believe in a God that I can't see, that I can't touch? Well, there's a lot of truth to that. But here's the thing, when people make up their mind, how hard and how difficult does it become? Got you a job. You sure? You sure, sister wanted it? Never mind. Yeah. And when we get to the next part of this and we start talking about the scene, yep, everything changes. And when we start talking about the scene, I want you to think about this with Brother Hay. We need to vocalize when God does things for us in our life. And don't be afraid of it. Because so many times people are afraid of what everybody's going to say or that it couldn't have happened that way. Now she married a farmer on the way to Lubbock. Not that moment, but yeah. I remember when I first met Ryan's wife, and we were living on Aspen, and she came to the door, and I told Sister Hay, I said, hey, I just met the girl that Ryan's going to marry. Well, whatever. I think we lived on Aspen, but it don't matter where. But the bottom line is, she said, no way. She said, not even possibility. Guess what? They've been married 10 years. But here's Brother Hayes' point. You know, sometimes God gives us little glimpses into things that we don't understand. And sometimes if we're not careful, the unseen things that happen in our life are little things that God does for us that we don't acknowledge. Does that make sense? And when I was putting this Bible study together, and I know that we've talked about faith so much, but then all of a sudden I look in here and I said, it's hard to believe in the unseen, but then I put down in the very next part, so that way you kind of know we're going to go through both of these. Life involves both the seen and the unseen. There is a lot of unseen things in our life, okay? There are a lot of seen things, all right? Now, I promise you, they used to have this bridge in Florida called the Skyway. And, you know, that's another one like that Chesapeake Bay Bridge. It's like I never like to go over that thing. And, you know, but guess what happened one day? One of these big boats hit that bridge and knocked it down. And people went off the bridge. And that bridge was closed for a long time. You think the people that experienced that situation had a newfound appreciation about bridges? Yeah, a lot of them, you're probably right, Sister Wanda. Some people probably said, I'm not going on any more bridges, right? But here's the thing that Brother Hayes getting at. Life is full of seen and unseen things. Okay? Now, how many know that you can't tell if a person's got a bad attitude or not until they talk? Right? Now, sometimes you can tell if somebody's struggling. You know, my son today said he had to go see one of the people at the college, and it was a lady, and they had told him that she went to lunch, but anyway, when she came in, he could tell she'd been crying. How many know what Burhay's first thing to him was? Well, did you ask her what was wrong? You know what he told me? He said, are you kidding me? I don't want to go to jail. And he went through a whole multitude of reasons why he couldn't have asked her if she was okay. Now, to be honest with you, the unseen part of that is, how many know in our society, especially for a long time, guys had to be real careful. And to the point that you got to be, a lot more to this place where maybe you're not asking because you don't know what's going on. And so you get a little bit afraid. And so what Burhay is saying is the enemy works in that unseen realm all the time. And one of the things he'll always tell you, how many have ever felt alone and really wondered if God was there? Okay? And it's a good thing, because one of the things we keep trying to get across here, and I hope it sinks into everybody, is even if you don't feel like it, get up and come to church and be around people that can encourage you. Okay? Now, I can't be responsible. I give you the little disclaimer like we have coming into our town. There's always going to be 3 or 4 people in church that, never mind, we'll just leave that alone, okay? But I promise you that the majority of people here will do their best to be an encourager to you. I promise you. Especially those that have a relationship with the Lord. And you say, why is that, Brother Hay? Because they've been where you're at. They might not see exactly what's going, the unseen part of what you're going through. They might not see it, but how many know the Spirit can confirm to you what's going on? Okay? And I was in Walmart the other day when I saw Sister Laura, your boy. And, of course, I didn't recognize him. I went by him. He ran me down a couple hours later. And he said, you don't know who I am. I'm like, oh, man. In case you're wondering, when you get to be Brother Hayes' age, there's a lot of times I go, no. I know that sounds bad, but you got to remember, some of these guys I haven't seen since they were little. And how many know people change? I don't know how he knew Brother Hay, but he knew Brother Hay. So I got to engage in conversation with him, all right? But I don't know all the things he's been through in his life. Even though we talked about some things, but I invited him to church. He had a lot of questions about church. Well, do we have this? Do you do that? I said, well, we don't do a lot of those things now. We need some more younger ones. I said, we have some younger ones. We just got to get them committed to working, right? And Burhay's just one of them honest kind of guys. I don't know how to be anything except who I am. But I remember talking to him. I don't know all the things that he's had go on in his life, but here's what I know. I know that Jesus is still the answer. Does that make sense? All the unseen things in his life that Burhay don't see, Jesus is the answer to help in any of those circumstances. And how many of you have ever had your mind just kind of overwhelmed? Okay? And I know for Brother Hay, it's been a rough few weeks for us. And then I lost my best friend the other day. And, Sister Hay forgot to tell me, and then she told me. But anyway, and when she told me, I'm like, that's just one of those things that get your attention, right? And she showed me a picture that Debbie had sent. And there's a reason why he was my friend. Now, you got to understand, back then, Brother Hay's 6'1". He's this tall. I'm this tall. Yeah, he's a pretty big guy. And so when we were in Bible school together, I knew who to have on my football team, just so you all know. I knew who I needed for a friend, right? And Of course, the picture's from a long, long time ago. So almost 50 years ago. But the thing that I want you to understand is a lot of times in our life, we haven't been close enough to really be able to interact a lot. Sister Hay and I were able to go see him a couple years ago. And it was because Brandon wanted to go to this store that sold Mr. Beast bars. I know that sounds funny. Anyway, it was some store in Ohio. And so, Sister Hay and I being good grandparents, we got to take care of our grandson, right? So we said, okay, well, we'll take you to this store that sells Mr. Beast bars. And then I found out it was like a 7-Eleven store. But anyway, but we went to Ohio. So one Sister A and I, somewhere we have pictures where we stopped, took pictures of going into Ohio. We were able to take the kids to the Noah's Ark thing that was there, stuff like that. But we got to go by and see Deb and Steve. Hadn't seen them in a long time, okay? The unseen part is both of us have had a lot of things happen in our lives. His daughter died in her sleep when she had a couple of babies. And, those kind of things, and been through a whole lot of stuff. But guess what? When we did actually get to see each other, the unseen stuff didn't really matter because the seen stuff was the relationship. And what Brother Hay wants to get across to you is your relationship with God needs to become seen in your life, not unseen. And we need to be willing to share that with other people. And I know that sometimes we have trouble sharing our relationship with the Lord because one of our favorite answers that people always give, well, I'm not a preacher. Well, you don't have to be a preacher. But when you begin to recognize some of the unseen things that happen in your life because you have a relationship with the Lord, you need to be able to tell people that. Does that make sense? And it's so hard sometimes for us to get arms around. Now, I can tell you, and depending on where you're at sometimes, things can really look kind of scary in the unseen realm, whether it's our mind being kind of frazzled. But I know that God can give us a peace that passes all understanding. But the seen part of that is when we share that with other people, that even in the midst of our storm, we have an anchor. Does that make sense? Those big old ships like Brother Randy used to be on, I won't call them boats and get in trouble because they're not boats, they're ships. I don't know a lot about the Navy, but I know a little bit. Don't call their ships boats. That don't work so well. Yeah, and it's kind of funny, really, but everybody's got their own thing, right? And what I always tell people is we have all these unseen things that dictate how we live our life. But what we got to start doing is looking for the seen. And it's hard, okay? It's hard to do that. And we'll spend a lot of time when we're talking about this, but it says on number 2, it just simply says, by faith Enoch was translated that he should not see death, and was not found because God had translated him. Before his translation, he had this testimony, that he pleased God. Now, there are some things in our relationship with God that we can't see yet. I'm not going to lie to you. I've never walked the streets of heaven. Okay? I'm not like that one preacher lady that her and her son take trips to some kind of spaceship or something and all that kind of crazy stuff. And y'all think Brother Hay is crazy, but there's people that follow them. Yeah. And how many remember a few years ago, okay, yeah, when the guys out in California, what was that called, Brother Ray? I can't remember the name of the group. Yeah, Haley's Comet. And no, they never made it to the comment. Yeah. Yeah. But here's Brother Hayes' point. We we can't prove that story true or false in the sense that unless we saw it for ourselves, right? Her story about going up there back and forth. But here's what we do. Okay, and why don't we buy it is because if she gets to do that and we have a relationship with God, there you go. All of a sudden, the first question is, how come God's not doing that for us? And what Brother Hay wants to tell you is that when you're struggling, okay, and people see that you're struggling, how many know you can't hide it sometimes? Okay? Just like that lady was crying today with my son. And don't worry, I give him grief for not asking her what was wrong. I told him I don't care about the excuses. She should have asked her. She's okay. But anyway, it's like I go to Walmart and sometimes there's a little cashier there. And Sharon, that's not been here for a while, but when I first met her, she was working at Walmart, and I invited her to church, and she came, and her and Brother Randy. And one of the things that I always try to talk to people and encourage them, because sometimes you can just tell somebody is being influenced by unseen things. How many of you can see anxiety? Now think about that. You can't literally see the anxiety, but you see the results of the anxiety. Does that make sense? So we can tell when somebody is anxious, right? Can you tell when somebody's anxious about stuff? Panic attacks, all those kind of things. We can see the result of it, but the anxiety itself, it's an unseen thing. How many know some people are better at hiding that? And what Brother Hay is getting at, sometimes we're hiding our relationship with Christ when it should come to the forefront. Does that make sense? Ah. Ah. Yeah. Mm. Ah. So, ah. Yeah. And the unseen part of his life, right? And what Brother Hay is getting at is it's scary because we all have that unseen area. How many know we have that area we don't want nobody else to get there? Especially if we're struggling with things or having a hard time with things or, not able to handle certain things, or especially if you get sick, whatever the case might be. And what Brother Hay is saying is we got to be careful because just like with faith, and it says, look, it's the substance of things hoped for. Understand that means unseen things. If you saw it, you wouldn't have to hope for it, right? If Brother Hay put a $20 bill up here, I wouldn't say whoever gets there fastest gets it, because that would be bad. In this group, we'd be in trouble. You all could win from back there, no problem. Okay? You might have to fight Tanya. Kaylee a trip. We don't got to worry about Kaylee. So you guys would be good to go, right? But here's Brother Hayes' point. You know, you could put it out there, and do you know if you do something like that, most people won't take it, because they don't want to be the person to get up and come get it. Is that true? You put it out here and you go, hey, whoever wants this, you can have this. Now, most people are going to have this unseen thing in their mind that says, if I go get that, they're going to think I'm greedy. Right? Are they going to think I'm being selfish? And all of a sudden, we have all these unseen thoughts that evolve in our head, right? You know what's so cool? You put that $20 out there with a bunch of kids, and guess what'll happen? There's going to be World War III at that $20 bill, because they're not worried about the thoughts. They're not worried about what people are thinking. And you say, brother, hey, why is that? Because they're still children. That's why God says if we're going to make it to heaven, we got to be like little children. All of a sudden, we've got to change our thought process from what everybody else thinks, what the world thinks, what others think, and begin to see in the unseen the things that we hope for. Does that make sense? And I know it's scary. Yeah, it is what we pray for. And it's always unseen until we get the answer. And sometimes some of these things, and Brother Singletary and I talk about this every once in a while, and Brother Randy, we've been together for a very long time in the church. And even Brother Lucero and George when they were here, and Brother Ryerson. And I did see him a few weeks ago, by the way. Keep him in prayer. He's really struggling, especially since she passed and then his grandson passed. But I want you to think about this. We talk about it all the time. You pray and you never quit. Even if you don't see an answer. If you're praying for your children, don't stop praying. Okay? Because the seen part of that is your actions. Okay? I knew when my grandma was praying for me, of course, she would let me know anyway. You know, she's quick to tell me, hey, boy, even if she called me by the wrong name half the time. But that was okay, too. Towards the end, it was pretty rough on her. And matter of fact, Sister Hay and I sometimes would write a card and put whose name on there that she wanted to hear from on the card and go over to see her, and she'd read that card and be so proud. Guess who sent me a card today? Now, we never told her any different. Okay? Make sense? And I tell people this all the time, just because you know something don't mean you have to tell everything you know. You know, sometimes people want to go and stir up stuff. How many know some things need to stay unseen and unsaid? Okay, and I'll give you an example. Sometimes with our emotions, when we're angry, have you ever said something and wish you would have just not said it? Yeah, Sister A has it takes her a while for stuff to kick in. But anyway, and we'll leave that alone. I don't want to get any more trouble. But you know what Brother Hayes is talking about, right? But how many know no matter how hard you want to, you can't take it back? And if you go to the Middle East, and I know most of you probably haven't been there, I don't know. I've been to Asia, Southeast Asia a lot, but I'm not too sure how they do it. But I will tell you in the Middle East, they are very slow in talking. They stop and think about their words because they believe words have life and death. They believe it. Words have life and death. They believe what God's word says about that. And y'all know that I'm a pretty patient guy. Man, I can't hardly talk to somebody like that. It's kind of like, come on here, like, answer me. Duh, I've been standing here waiting for an answer. Hello. So, sort of like going through the drive-thru at McDonald's, right? They ask you if you're going to use their whatever, the app, and you tell them no. And you start to give your order, and you can just tell nobody's on the other side because the screen don't change. I did that the other day, and I go, hello? And all of a sudden I hear a voice, go ahead. And I'm thinking, okay, I've been waiting all this time, And then guess what happened? I could tell it went blank again. And they never did put anything on the screen. I'm thinking, it's going to be one of them kind of days. Right, Kaylee? But I was behaving. But the unseen thing was, they didn't know it, but the mic was open, and I could hear them talking through the speaker thing. And then I'm kind of trying to do my best not to get angry. and so I wait another minute or two, and they're talking, right? And I go, excuse me, do I get to finish my order, or do I need to come inside? Then they took my order. And I wasn't trying to be mean, but here's Brother Hayes' point. Sometimes we don't know what's going on. And when I got to the window now, if you go to McDonald's in the morning like Brother Hay does, they usually know my order. Right, Kaylee? They know she's drinking a high C. They know Sister Hayes getting oatmeal. They know I'm getting a coffee with 2 creams and 2 sugars. The only time I put cream and sugar in my coffee, because McDonald's coffee can be pretty strong. But, yeah, it's good coffee, but it's pretty strong. And so, they kind of know our order. And now if I'm going to Sip and Savor, I don't order Tanya's. Kaylee, our Sister A goes, I don't want no coffee from there, blah, blah, blah. Okay, then I order Tanya's at McDonald's. But they know our voice. And even when I go to Sip and Savor to get Tanya and Sister A their coffee in the morning, the little girls all know my voice. It's kind of cool, huh? They can't see me, but they know my voice. Now I'm going to tell you a secret. We might not always be able to see God, but we should know his voice. Does that make sense? And so the reason Brother Hay is taking some time talking about this tonight, and hopefully we'll do this in a couple of weeks. It won't be a 4 or 5 weeker, but I just want you to think about this. You know what? We've got to learn the voice of God. So if you say, Brother Hay, how do I know that it's God talking to me? Okay? I'm going to show you how you know. It's right here. God is not going to tell you anything that don't line up with this. I promise you that. God is not going to go or contradict what he has taught us here. So if you get angry and a little voice says within you, go knock them in the nose, it's not coming from here. Those two things aren't going to work, right? The unseen part of that is there's something else at work, and it's not God. You know what, Sister Rhonda, Brother Hay, be lying if I told you that you're absolutely right. A lot of times you want to. Well, yeah, that's why you got to limit even how much news you watch. And then Sister Ray and I talk about that. Lots of times she gets up and I'm watching sports instead of the news. Well, what's going on? I said, I really don't know and don't care right now. I need to clear my head. I did my devotion and listened to 5 minutes of the news, and I got to go do my devotion over. Yep, there's a lot of truth to that. Yeah, well, but here's Brother Hayes' point. You know, we don't realize this, but the enemy works in the unseen part of our life. When we get to the scene, I'll give you a couple of samples where he works there too, but for the most part, it's in the unseen things that the enemy does his best work. Because how many know nobody can see your emotion? Now, unless you're one of those people, Do you know people that when they're mad, you automatically know? I mean, you just look them in the eye, you know they're mad. Now, Sister A's been with Brother Hay long enough, she could tell, I guess my voice changes. And she could tell when, okay, he's had all he's going to take. I get an attitude. That's what she tells me. But I try my best not to do that too often. I used to always tell people, you know what? I never worried about people that screamed and yelled and did all that crazy stuff. You know, I never worried about them. The ones I always kept my eye on were the ones that weren't talking, the ones that were being real quiet. Have you ever noticed that after somebody does something horrible and kills a bunch of people, almost everybody says the same thing? Well, we can't hardly believe it. They were so quiet. They never talked to nobody. They kept to themselves. They were a loner. Yep. And so what Brother Hay is telling you, that's the other reason we can't forsake the assembling of ourselves together, because it's for our protection to keep those unseen things in our mind from becoming a seen thing. Does that make sense? Well, sometimes you have to. This then it's going to get worse. This is what I used to tell Sister Donna. She was real good at this. Her and her older sister Missy, I know it's girls. I'm not saying it's because they were girls, but it was because they were girls. They never quit talking. They just kept going and going and going. And you know, wanting to get in this big, long, drawn-out thing and 8 million things. This is what I used to tell them. I'd go to their bedroom door and I'd open the door. I go, you can go in there and say whatever you want. I don't care. You can even say bad words, whatever. I don't care. That's your space. You do whatever. I said, but when you walk out this door, there's going to be a different thing that's in charge. And that's going to end. It's sort of like Brother Singletary saying, hey, you can come in, but that attitude got to go back outside and coming in here, right? With boys, it's a little, I think it's easier. But with the girls, it was like, well, because if it was my son, I probably would have snatched him up and it had been the end of it. But you can't snatch your girls up. It's just, it don't work that way. But anyway, it's just, and so I want you to understand, though, Brother Randy's right, though, there are times when we need those spaces, right? Can I tell you a secret? It's okay to pray to God and let him know that you're angry, because he already knows. And what is so funny, Brother, hey, I always knew what they were saying and what they were thinking. And when they come out, guess what? They go to say something, I go, it don't matter. The answer's still no. So, do you need to go back to your room for a while? That's just how it worked. Yeah, I know. That's how I got away. That was my Texas job. But here's the thing. It doesn't matter. We all have those unseen parts in our life, but we got to start giving those to God, because we have to recognize that God sees the unseen in our heart and in our life. And I want you not to be afraid. And as we start going through this, I got to tell you, you got to start telling people the good things. You hear Sister Singletary and I talk about Josh's baby. She's the one that was at the hospital whenever we went up there. And I know Brother Singletary was working. But she's the one that was there when the doctors pretty much said, hey, that baby's lungs were filled all the way to the top. Wasn't a whole lot of hope. But you know what? Years later, we forget what God did. Mm. Yeah. Yep. And God will do that. That's the unseen part. But the seen part is we got to tell people what God did. I Yeah. See, and God does those things, but we have to acknowledge those unseen things that happen. Does that make sense? And every time I see the little one come with Veronica, every time Silas, well, I know he's not little anymore, but every time I see him, I'm quick to let people know that he's a miracle. Okay, I saw Josh's boy a while back, Joseph, in Allsops. Of course, I didn't recognize him either. He's a pretty good sized guy now. He's still skinny, but he's tall, and I didn't recognize him. And you know what? He gave Brother Hay a big hug, and we talked. And I told him, he probably won't remember, but I told him, Brother Singletary, I said, you're a miracle from God. Don't ever forget that. I don't know what he's going through. Of course, I invited him to church. Yep, Kaylee's a miracle. And I look at that, and I know it's almost time to go. But what Brother Hay is getting at, we need to let people know that in the unseen, God is working. And that faith is demonstrated in the scene, whether it was with Joseph or Silas, our little Kaylee over there. When we first got her, it was kind of funny. My dad had gotten killed in a car accident. We had to go to Florida, and we had Ryan because the mom brought him to us when everything went down with Kaylee. Yep. And what happened was they hurt Kaylee. And so, it was one of those things. Kaylee was this cute little baby, right? And they told us, they said, well, we had Tyrona, which is pretty, most of you haven't got to meet her, but the ones that have been in church for a while have got to meet her. And Brother Hay apologizes, I just can't lift her in and out of her wheelchair anymore. I just can't do it. I did at Christmas time, and I haven't been able to use my left arm since. But anyway, we left, and they had put Kaylee, I think she was in 3 or 4 homes before we got back in like 7 days. And the reason they did that is they said, we had so much that they're going to leave Ryan with us because he had a bond. Yeah. And all these people, how many know lots of people in the system always want babies? Well, when we got back, the social worker called us up and said, hey, would you guys still consider taking Kaylee? And Sister Hay and I were kind of thinking, what's the unseen part of this? Well, let me tell you what the unseen part was. Kaylee was on a monitor that went off a half a dozen times during the night, and she stopped breathing and oxygen. And there's nothing scarier than waking up in the middle of the night and a baby not breathing. You know what I'm saying? So Kaylee's definitely one of those miracles too. And so Sister Hay and I, she always reminds us, hey, you asked for this. In case you all are wondering, Kaylee's going to be 31 Saturday. Yeah, I know your birthday. She'll be 31 on Saturday. So she's always telling me, your mom asked for this. And then she always tells me, I know you pray for patience. That's why God gave me to you. Which is really true. But anyway, I want you to think about this. The unseen part of that was, I don't know how many nights Sister Hay and I slept with her in our front room on the floor on a mattress. Man, I couldn't do that anymore. I couldn't get up in the morning. But anyway, I'd have to have somebody pick me up. But we slept with her between us on a mattress with the alarm going off in the middle of the night half a dozen times. And I'll never forget when she finally got to the place where that didn't happen anymore. The alarm goes off, and when Sister Hay and I wake up, here's Kaylee. She's laughing at us. And we're looking at each other. We're like, Then it happens again. Then we take her to the doctor and said, hey, we don't think she needs this thing anymore. And they did some testing, and they told us, no, we think she's going to be okay. And we just had to keep our eye on her. And I know it's time to go, but I want you to think about how many times this week God has done something for you. I know you all were able to get a car. That is so cool. You know, don't ever let anybody tell you that God didn't have nothing to do with it, because he did. I believe with all my heart that so many things that God does for us, we don't always see them. But not only do we need to see them, but we need to tell people about it. Because when I look at Fred, I can say, Fred, I know you might be struggling, but guess what? Brother Hay does, but God got me through, he'll get you through. When I look at my brother and I know he lost his daughter, I can tell him, look, I know God can get you through this. Because I've been through that with so many things and over the years, right? But here's what I know at the end of the day. Sometimes God allows us to have the pain. Sometimes he allows us to go through the hurt. And people always say to me, well, Brother Hay, why would God let that happen? I want you to understand that God didn't create this evil. Evil entered into this world when sin did, and people have free choice. And I'm glad I'm not somebody's puppet. I think I'd be like the guy in the Matrix. I'd find a way to get out. I'd be like, no, I'm not hanging in here. Sister Ray's looking at me. Those that saw the Matrix know exactly what I'm talking about. Those that don't know what the Matrix movie is, you won't understand. But I would be that guy. Nope, I'm out of here. Yep. Yep. And the unseen part of this is we might not always see what God is doing, but at the end of the day, we'll understand. Does that make sense? And at the end of the day, we got to trust him. And even in those unseen things, I can't see the sun right now, and y'all can stand. We'll close. Otherwise, Brother Hay had talked for an hour. But we can't see the sun right now, right? Can I tell you a secret? I don't know what time tomorrow's sunrise is. I should have Googled it before I came to church. But I promise you in the morning, right on time, that big old sun's going to pop that eastern sky. I can't see it. It's unseen right now. And if anybody doubts this, let Brother Hay just reaffirm this to you. The darkest is before the dawn. Just take my word for it. I've been in them places where it's so dark that you can't see your hand in front of you. I've walked into fences and other things in the middle of the night, and you know what is so cool? A little flashlight, Brother Singletary, that you're not supposed to have is what they told us. But, hey, I have my cheap flashlight. Sometimes I just turn it on by my leg, and you would not believe how much that little light kept me out of trouble. Yeah. But here's the thing. I promise you that the answer's on the way. And if you can't see with what you're going through, know that God works in the unseen, but he always rewards in the seen. That's what we'll be talking about in the next couple of weeks. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for the opportunity to be in your house. Lord, first and foremost, I thank you for each one that's here. Father, you know every situation. You know every circumstance. Father, you know every heart. You know every struggle. And Father, I just pray, God, that you would wrap your arms around each one. Allow them to feel your presence and know that